Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku back in another video, and today I am going to be talking about some of the things recently that are coming up about the Green Bay Packers ownership, stake, and all this other stuff that's being come up. Which, of course, Ed, our new president, Ed Policy, our new president, he has not really endeared himself to the fan base as of late. He's in year two, and he has undermined a lot of the fan base's trust by basically saying that, Green Bay, oh, well, the way, we're at a disadvantage, yada, 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 all this other stuff. And then the naming right things came up for Lambeau Field. There was backlash about that. He clarified that, it was going to be something like Arrowhead. Arrowhead has like a company sponsorship, and then it's at Arrowhead Stadium. I'm sorry, not at Arrowhead. Arrowhead Stadium, like it was the I don't remember. It was I don't remember what the company name is, but basically there was a company name. They got the naming rights to Arrowhead, but they still had to keep Arrowheads in the name or whatever for the Kansas City Chiefs. Basically, that's what they wanted to do for the Green Bay Packers Lambeau Field. Is they wanted a company name. Stadium probably would have been put in there, and then it would have been at Lambeau Field. So they would have kept the Lambeau Field name, but they would have had something in front of it for naming rights. Now, there was tremendous backlash for this, so Ed Policy kind of backed off on this. Now, because of his statements, we got Mr. Mike Florio, which I have a like-hate relationship with some of his opinions, but it's better to have him around than not, because there's a lot of things that I do think Florio does contribute to with letting people know about certain things that the NFL does that we would never find out if he wasn't around, because pretty much anybody that talks about football is pretty much paid off. NFL football is paid off by the NFL. The channels won't let you talk about stuff that Mike is allowed to talk about, because he's individually owned. Yes, the NBC sponsors his thing. I think there's a part ownership in it, but he is the majority owner. And so he's allowed to talk about whatever he wants, basically. The NFL can't, stop him. And that's why, he can talk about the Gruden stuff and, how the courts are favoring Gruden and they're favoring Brian Flores and all this other stuff that's going on. He can talk about it because the NFL can't silence him. Like the NFL can silence these other football analysts that do channels and stuff like that. So in that sense, I like Mike because he does bring up things that most football analysts can't talk about. However, there are some times where I really feel Mike is very disservice to some of his opinions and takes. That being said, and this is where we get in with Green Bay, because he has said some outlandish stuff about the Green Bay Packers lately. So we're going to get into that. Also, I would say, Mike, if you are watching this video, which I doubt you are, but if you are, get a fucking new mic. Your mic is ass. Okay? My microphone, which is a mediocre microphone that I'm using right now, a Blue Yeti, okay? that I'm using. I'm not using my voice acting microphone. Okay, is way better than the microphone you're currently using. Okay, and people have commented about this for a while. It's been like 2 weeks now. So get a new microphone. Seriously, you have the resources. You have way more money than I do. So get a new microphone. Okay. Anyways, AT2020. That's my voice acting microphone that I use, my AT2020, which is way better than this microphone, but still, he should have way better than the microphones I currently have. So, anyways, so the first thing we're talking about is what is going on with the Packers right now. So lately, one of the things Florio talked about a month ago, and I did leave a comment on him for saying it, was the idea that the Packers, the channels, if the, what's it called? If the government decides to, the federal government decides to take away the NFL's, waiver of them, being a monopoly or whatever, monopolizing the channels and all that stuff. Because they got an exemption in like 1960, or I don't remember the year, it was like in the 1960s, they got an exemption. Okay. If they take that away because, they're doing streaming and all this stuff, and more primetime TV, they're saying if you take this away, then the Green Bay Packers won't be able to survive. This is something that Florio had brought up, which I left him a comment on his thing. I don't know if he read it or not, but I'm sure other people commented as well. But he said this, and I was like, yes, if this was maybe like the 1950s, you would be right. But it's not. This is today. The Packers are one of the most profitable and more well-recognized NFL franchises in the NFL. People outside of the United States know who the Green Bay Packers are, okay, for them being a small market team. The idea that the Packers, if, the NFL lost their exemption for channels, okay, the idea that the Packers wouldn't be able to get their own channel locally, because they are, not owned by a $1 billion owner, is absolutely ridiculous. It is fucking ridiculous. Do you know, I think it would be the goddamn opposite. I think it would be the opposite. I think Mike has this totally fucking wrong, okay? I think the Packers would have no issues getting a channel, okay, locally. Whether it be cable, whether it be locally, I think they could easily get it. They have the most winning championships in the NFL. I'm counting the NFL championships and the Super Bowls. Okay, that's why the Packers are called Title Town, because they have the most NFL total championships, world championships in NFL history. The NFL championships, from the NFL title game eras to the 4 Super Bowls they had post NFL championship game era into the Super Bowl era. Okay, we have the most world championships overall in NFL history. Do you think a channel would not chalk up the bit to bid on the Green Bay Packers? If you think that, then I don't see how you not understand business at this point. Businesses want teams that are profitable. Businesses want teams that are worldwide phenomenons that are gonna get people are gonna watch and pay for. Okay, the Packers got a 50-year waiting list to own a season fucking ticket. Okay, it's ridiculous. Okay, and it makes me wonder if Mike, who has so much freedoms to say whatever he wants because the NFL can't touch him, okay, it makes me wonder if he has some type of agenda against the Green Bay Packers. Okay, because the way he's been talking about the Packers has been ridiculous lately. Okay, it has been ridiculous. Okay, with some of the stuff that he's been bringing up. Okay, and it's just not true. Okay, now something that brought up, I guess today, he made a video today talking about, and this was the most egregious thing I had seen, is he made a video today talking about how the Packers might have to dissolve and become an expansion team. You know, that the ownership group would have to, dissolve, and that the terms of the agreement would be that, that a $1 billion owner would take on the new Packers expansion team to, they would make sure that the new owner would be, a Packers fan, and they, and whatnot. Okay, Mike, that will never fucking happen. If you think this if you think this is going to happen, you are delusional. You are fucking delusional. Do you think the city of Green Bay would allow that to happen? The Packers are owned by the city, first and foremost. Okay, it's not just a board of directors. The board of directors are appointed through the city. Okay, they are appointed through the city. Okay, as a matter of fact, Ed Policy getting hired has a lot to do with the ownership group. Yes, the paper isn't really worth anything. The most people that buy the stocks or whatever, it's not transferable. He's right about that. Okay, but the higher up people involved in the Packer company structure, okay, that all has to go through Green Bay as a city. Okay, do you think in any God's green earth that the Packers or that the city of Green Bay would allow that to happen? Okay, that would be insanity. That would be insanity for them to give up their rights. Do you really think a $1 billion owner is not going to move the team or try to, get rid of Lambeau Field for another fucking stadium like we're seeing all across the NFL? There's no fucking way that anyone would go for that. That is delusional takes. Also, there's a gray area when it comes to an expansion team for Green Bay, that they would dissolve the Packers structure. That they would dissolve the Packers structure and then revive the Packers as an expansion team similar to the Cleveland Browns, right? Okay, the only difference is they had an owner before. That they would do that, but what would happen then? They would be a new team. It wouldn't be the Green Bay Packers anymore. It would not be the Packers that won all those championships, that won the 4 Super Bowls, that won all the other NFL championships that they won. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. And also, there would be also a constitutional issue, I think, we're going this far with the courts, because there would be an issue on whether or not that these players that would currently be playing for the Green Bay Packers under contract, okay, would their contracts be carried over? Okay? Because they signed with the company, the Green Bay Packers Incorporated company. Okay? They didn't sign for a $1 billion owner that frickin', it's a new team. It's a new expansion team. That's something that can't be overlooked. So there would be so many fucking issues. This would never happen. They would never. Hell, I would argue that Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, wouldn't allow it to happen, because there's so much growth and there's so much economic that goes into it, especially with the 50-year wait list on Lambeau Field and being a season ticket holder. Okay, there's just so many things that Mike just totally looked off on by saying that, oh, well, this could happen. It could happen. I'm like, no, Mike, this cannot fucking happen. This cannot. All right, it will not happen. As a matter of fact, I would argue that if Ed, because he also tried to say that, if the boards got on board for it, if Ed got it, because he was talking about Ed, one of the things is for the team president, because team president is kind of like our owner essentially in green for the Packers, because we don't have an actual owner, right? So if the team president, who has to retire at age 70. Like, that's the mandated age. Okay, that's what happened to Mike Murphy, right? Mark Murphy, sorry. That's what happened to Murphy. Like, he had to retire because he was now 70 years old. That's the retiring age for the Green Bay Packers presidents. Okay, they have to retire, and then a new president has to take over. Okay, that's voted on by the board and stock people that have enough influence in it. So that's what has to happen, right? Okay. If Ed Policies isn't having the best interest for the team, do you really think the city of Green Bay officials are going to allow him to continue being president? Because they could vote him out. They can vote him out as team president, too. They can very well vote him out if they feel like he's not doing the best interest for the Green Bay Packers. And he's already got off to a rough start with the stuff he made about Lambeau Field. Okay? Now, are there things that the Packers are going to have to do to compete with the other 31 franchises? Absolutely. But it isn't something that the Packers haven't done before. Like, Mike Florio is completely looking over that fact. The Packers have been in this situation throughout the NFL's history. Okay? Like, that's the thing that's completely gone past everybody when Mike Florio talks about the Packers owner structure. This has always come up, all right? It goes back to the late 40s into the 50s before you all were even alive, okay? In the late 40s and early 50s, the NFL basically told the Packers that they had to make a new stadium, which ended up being, obviously, Lambeau Field. It was originally named New City Stadium, but they renamed it Lambeau Field. But the reason why they had to do that was because the Packers, from their beginnings in the NFL to 1956, they were playing in a high school. The Packers' original stadium that they played in from the birth of the Green Bay Packers in 1919 to 1956, they played in a high school stadium. They played in a high school stadium. The high school stadium, like in the, after the first, decade or whatever it was, they had to create, an expansion, where they, put some new seatings up so there could be about 20,000 capacity in this high school, right? That way it would be a little better. However, they couldn't expand it any further, and by the 1940s, the NFL basically said that this can't work anymore. Like, you need to get a new stadium. And again, this was in the late 40s and 50s, might I add, okay, when they were telling that the Packers had to do this. Okay, so they created Lambeau Field so they can compete with the new trends in the 50s, okay? And again, they came up with these problems in the 60s as well, when the Lombardi years were going on. And they had to do more expansions, okay? And during the years where the Packers weren't that competitive in pretty much almost all the 70s decade, and most of the 80s decade, okay, they still had to continue expanding, okay? Milwaukee had a couple of home games, so Lambeau Field, we weren't playing Lambeau Field as much, since there was like half games in Milwaukee Stadium, okay? Eventually, we left Milwaukee Stadium completely, I believe, in '94, and we had all our home games going forward in Lambeau Field. But, it's been a struggle since then. Brett Favre came around, and, they were able to get the renovations that they needed. They got some tax renovations. Now, of course, this is before the times of people saying owners pay their own thing, which, by the way, the Packers were owned by the city, so that might be the one thing that saved them. But again, this was, I think, in '99 when that happened. It was 53% of the votes to 47, so the renovations did go on for Green Bay, and they continued to expand, for the changing in the league. And its expansion. And then, of course, in the 2010s, they had to do that. They got more renovations through the ownership bond thing, which, they can always do that again at any time. But my point being is Mike is completely not Mike Florio completely does not understand that the Packers have always had these issues coming up about the trends of the NFL, the NFL getting bigger and stuff like that. This has always been an issue. It's not going to just stop just because all these other billionaire owners just keep paying, $9 billion. I think the most recent Seattle deal was $9.6 billion, which again is a record. It beats the Broncos. The Broncos, I believe, was I don't remember what the number was. It was, I think, 9.1. I think it was 9.1 billion. I think the Bills was about 6.3, if I'm remembering correctly. I could have these numbers wrong. I'm trying to remember how much the bill. But the point being, it was billions of dollars went into this stuff. Okay, so the idea that these teams that get sold, okay, isn't going to one-up the next team, okay, is ridiculous. The Bills were up from the previous team. I'm trying to remember what the Washington Redskins number was, but the Redskins number was like, did the Redskins come after the Broncos or the Broncos was before that? I'm trying to remember that, but the numbers were higher for the next deal, okay? So of course Seattle was going to beat what the Redskins paid for, what the Broncos new owner paid for, what the Bills new owner paid. It's always going to go up. Every year the values of all these teams go up. It's economics. It doesn't matter. Like, that's always going to be a thing. That doesn't mean that the Packers aren't valuable. The Packers literally are valuable. If you have a 50-year wait list, you're selling out the games. You're watching the games. That team is valuable. That team is more profitable than the Jacksonville Jaguars. You want to talk about Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have more of an issue because nobody really cares for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know Tony and Sheikhan, all of them are trying to make them profitable more by, renovating the stadium and stuff like that, but people just Jacksonville isn't really that much of a, if anyone is going to have a problem with getting rid of that waiver, the market share waiver, it's going to be someone like the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is struggling to have mainstream appeal. Okay, that's why the Cons are having extra games overseas. Okay, that's why they're having extra games overseas. More than what the NFL, mandates them to have. Okay. And they've been doing that for years because they're trying to get worldwide appeal, because people in the United States just don't really care about Jacksonville outside of the, people that live in Jacksonville. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, teams like that are going to have more of an issue, okay? You know, the teams that everybody knows, okay? You know, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Cowboys, okay? The Packers, okay? Teams like that, okay, just as an example, okay, teams like that, everybody knows who they are. People know who the Raiders are, okay? People know who the Packers are. People know, the Patriots, okay? People know these teams, okay? They don't need a refresher of, oh, who's this team? They're not the bottom feeder teams, okay? These are teams that have worldwide appeal, okay? So the idea that if they lose their exemption, that's going to hurt the Packers because they're not owned by a billionaire owner is bullshit. Okay, it's fucking bullshit. It's totally inaccurate. Okay, totally fucking inaccurate. Okay. All right. And again, it's what's it called? The share groups. One of the other things he brought out was they can't have minority owners. Because they're owned by stocks. I don't see any way the Packers ever aren't not owned by the city. Now, if they ever did introduce minority groups, that would be different than a primary owner group, because that's just never not going to happen. But I don't think that can even happen because, again, it's stockholders. But I think it's ridiculous that there's no options, that the Packers, they need to figure out an option of what they're going to do because of the growing trends of the NFL, when the Packers, going back all the way to the 50s, have had to adjust to the growings of the league, okay, and still managed to come out on top, okay? They've always managed to come out on top. So why should it be any different now than it was back when we weren't even alive yet, okay? It's just insane. It's just insane. And again, I've been a diehard Green Bay Packers fan my entire life, pretty much. I've been a Packers fan since I was 3 years old, going on 4. I'm not even kidding. I have pictures of me wearing Packers stuff, okay, from when I was that little, okay? So I have been a diehard of this team, thick and thin. I had to go through Brett Favre leaving, who was my favorite quarterback of all time. Okay, Brett Favre is my favorite personal quarterback. I had to go through him leaving to go to the Jets and then unfortunately go to the fucking Vikings. Okay, I had to deal with that thicken and thicken. I had to deal with, and that was when I was in high school. I had to deal with, Aaron Rodgers leaving us because our GM decided that he didn't want him anymore. Okay, I had to deal with that, okay? We have been loyal to this team, and I'm sure there are people that might be watching right now that have been thick into this team from when the team wasn't doing well in most of the 70s and 80s. I wasn't alive then. I was born in 1991, okay? So the first memory of me as a Packers fan is Brett Favre, okay? In the Favre years. But I'm sure people that might be watching this today might have lived through the 70s decade and lived through the most of the 80s decades before Don Majkowski came along, okay? And had to experience the Packers during those not so good years, okay? We always stuck together. Even when, the Packers went 4-12 in 2005 or went 8-8 in 2006, we still supported the Packers. There was always sellout games for the Packers. Like, even during that awkward season, when Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone and missed most of the year that year, and we ended up finishing 8-8 and won the division. When Aaron Rodgers played the last game of the regular season and beat the Bears in Chicago. you know, and then of course he lost the 49ers in Green Bay. But we've stuck together through all of that. Okay? We stuck together through all of that. We're going to still be here. These fans are still going to be here. And there's not one fan that wants the Packers to be owned by a billionaire owner. Even if they did put some hypothetical provisions in that the Packers can never, demolish Lambeau Field, or, they could never build a dome, a new stadium, or the current stadium of Lambeau Field, has to be outdoors no matter what. Okay? Even if they put provisions in like that, because that's something fans are going to want. Okay? Even if they put provisions in that, there is no way in hell not one person in the fan base is going to like that. Okay? And they own the team. And even though, the freaking thing doesn't work, it doesn't, the paper certificate doesn't really matter, it's going to matter to those fans that want the team to stay as a publicly owned team. It creates the mystique. It creates the fan experience that this is a community team. It's the only community team in the NFL. It's the only community team, I'm pretty sure, overall in any sport, at least in the major ones. Okay, it's a tremendous thing. It's a tremendous feeling. And to get rid of that and try to dismantle it is ridiculous. And I think Mike Florio should have known better. And, I don't know what his game is for this. I don't know why he wants to spin this narrative about the Green Bay Packers, but it really does piss me off. And Mike, you know better. You're someone that I've watched for years, and you've covered some great topics, but you need to pow out. You need to pow out on this, because I'm getting sick and tired of hearing some videos of you talking about bullshit that isn't fucking true, because the ownership groups, you know how it works. It's never happening. And you should know better than that. That's what I got to say about it. That's what I got to say about it, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And, that's it. I am the SS Ultimate Goku, and I'm out of here. Peace. Go Pack, go! I'm out. Peace. Also, besides my YouTube channel, to make sure to follow me on the Twitch, the Instagram, and I do have a Discord link in the description where we discuss various topics, including this one here. And also, I do have a Google community post where I do also post there if you do not have a Discord or do not want to join Discord, where I'll also do updates as well. So now I'm out. Peace.